From Theatrical Shenanigans, this is The Panel Presents, with
Dana Hall,
George Sapio,
Deborah A. Cole,
Robert J. LeBlanc.
Hello there, and welcome to a very special episode of The Panel Presents on Theatrical Shenanigans with me, your host, Rachel Feeney-Williams. Of course, I love all the episodes of The Panel Presents I get to do, but this one in particular is special because it's our 12th episode. That's right, we've had a full year's worth of panellists coming here to chat with me about all things theatrical, so for this 12th episode, I thought I'd bring back the fabulous four who started it all. So, let's introduce them, shall we? My first panellist joins me from New England, USA, and was a part of Theatrical Shenanigans in its infancy when he appeared as a guest in episode 3 of season 1 to discuss the family comedy Coming In by Christopher Plumridge, as well as his own work, and believe me, there is a lot of it. He's an award-winning playwright, actor, voice actor and artist, as well as being the producer, head writer, host, improviser and designer of the comedy ensemble Balderdash Academy. Welcome back, Robert J. LeBlanc.
Hello, thank you.
My second panellist joins me from Chicago, USA, and is a regular feature on Theatrical Shenanigans. We first met her when she performed in the dark comedy topical play Stalk Patrol, written by Deborah A. Cole, in episode 4 of season 1. From there, she's acquired a healthy list of stats, having performed twice in season 1, once in our first series of mini shenanigans, and then going on to be a performer, playwright and guest in season 2. In fact, her own play The Little Christmas Tree actually ended the series. Following that, she was a featured playwright on our anniversary special with her play Boogeyman, and on our International Women's Day special with her play My Vagina Has a First Name. As well as that, she was a double feature playwright in our most recent series of mini shenanigans with her two plays Always and The Long Goodbye. When she's not busy being a fabulous voice actor and playwright with Theatrical Shenanigans, she's a playwright, actor and mental health therapist. Always a joy to speak to her. Welcome back, Dana Hall.
welcome everyone.
My third panellist joins me from Costa Rica and is connected to Dana as the playwright of Maria and Little Joey Have a Baby, which Dana performed in and was a featured play in season 2. However, his connection to Theatrical Shenanigans goes back a lot further than that. In season 1, he was a performer in Monday, Tuesday, Friday by Greg Hatfield in episode 2, before joining me as a guest in episode 5 to discuss Tony Vale's play A Trifle Upset. Then, as well as being a featured playwright in season 2 himself, he was also a performer in Dana Hall's play The Little Christmas Tree. His play Deconstructing Oneself also made up one of the 13 plays we had in our 1-year anniversary special, and his play Seasons was recently featured in our second season of Mini Shenanigans. Most recently, however, he performed as the character Conflict in Evan Boffman's play Conflict Resolution, all of which you can listen back to on our website. As well as all that, he's a fabulous playwright, dramaturge and the wonderful producer of the podcast On Stage, Off Stage. Always fabulous to talk to him, and a thrill to welcome back George Sapio.
Hi, Rachel. It's an absolute pleasure to be back here again.
And finally, my fourth panellist joins us from Lawrence, Kansas, USA, and is someone who's been supporting and been a part of Theatrical Shenanigans since the very beginning. In season 1, she was also a performer in Monday, Tuesday, Friday, followed by being a featured playwright of Stalk Patrol, as previously mentioned, before going on to appear as a guest in episode 9 to discuss the dark comedy play The Front Line by Lynn Robinson. As with our previous two panellists, she also had her play By the Shorthairs featured in our anniversary special, as well as being a performer in George Sapio's play. She then went on to hit a double feature in March, being a featured playwright in Mini Shenanigans with her play Camel Girl, and then less than a week later, she was a featured playwright and guest on our International Women's Day special with her play Sister from the Same Mister. She's an utterly fabulous playwright who advocates for older performers, which you can see in her collection The Wrinkle Ranch and Other Short Plays About Growing Old, which is available through Next Stage Press. I really couldn't ask for a better fourth panellist. Welcome back, Deborah A. Cole.
Hi, Rachel. Glad to be here.
So, as always, we start the proceedings with a question to the group. Why do you think playwriting is so important, both to you and in general? And we'll start with George.
Storytelling, of course. That's what we do. There are things that mean something to us as individuals, and we individuals happen to have this particular notion of scribbling these things down and making it seem like other people are actually living it out. This is called playwriting, but we have stories that we want to tell, things that mean something to us. It's important because this is how we get to know each other. This is the way it's been all through history. Spoken word stories passed down from generation to generation. Every play has a point. Every play has something that the playwright wants you to know, to understand, to see their point of view. And the more we see other people's point of view, the more we're going to get along.
Absolutely. Dana, can you follow that?
I love that answer by George because I also see it very similarly that art in general is just an enhancement to our understanding of the world. And especially in playwriting, I love seeing the representation of diversity of worlds, perspectives, personalities, um, perceptions. It fosters this sense of community that you can get vicariously, which I love watching these worlds take place. It's such a powerful thing to be a world builder and a reflection of a world. And I just deeply value that. And there's something about every work that one can take away. And what one takes away is often very different than the person next to them consuming theater and plays. So, yes, I agree with George. It's just it's a nod to our I suppose our collective humanity up there, and we get to watch it before us. So, yeah.
Bob, what about you?
So there's an immediacy to theater that you don't get in other art forms, particular film, which it's often compared to. With theater, it's a lot more intimate. You are there in the room with them. There's an impact to that, an emotional impact and an emotional connection that you can't get with other art forms. In particular, there's also can be a very fast turnaround in theater. You can go from script to stage in as little as a week in some cases. That allows us the opportunity to directly comment on what's happening today in society. You're looking at a film, you're 4 years out, 2 years if you rush it. You can get a stage show up and running with a cultural, emotional impact in a week. I mean, that's unheard of in many other art forms. You can, with suspension of disbelief, go anywhere, use anything, have any prop, have any location, have any story, any character. There is a freedom and an immediacy to theater that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Absolutely. And finally, Deb.
Wow, what to follow up after all those great answers.
Sorry.
Next time I'm first. No, I'm joking. I was thinking about, as everyone was talking, I believe playwriting is so much. It's therapy, it's creativity, it's connection, it's storytelling. But what it also is that we didn't mention is an opportunity for playwrights to find voices, humans to find their voices. And playwriting is a zero entry. You can get in there with a piece of paper and a pencil and find your voice. You can get in there with your blank Word document. And I'm teaching right now adult playwriting classes, and it is amazing when you see the light bulbs go on, that they find their voice, they have a story to tell, they need to get it out there, and the fingers start going. And it doesn't take a big investment to get started into playwriting and to find your voice and to find your people.
Yeah, no, completely. Well, now is the time I would normally start quizzing each of you, but as this is a special, I thought we'd allow the panelists to ask me a question. God help me. So we will start with Dana.
Okay, well, how does it feel, first and foremost, to be in the hot seat? No. It's never a hot seat when we're in these discussions. I love them so much. I wanted to ask this question because, Rachel, you are one of the most prolific playwrights that I know. I think we can all agree your tenacity is without measure. Um, and your generosity to others is just outstanding, and how you promote us as a community and give these platforms. So my question to you, with all of that said, is there a certain piece that you've written that has become, dare I say, your darling, your favorite? And if so, what is it that makes you hold on to that piece in a special kind of regard?
I think this is the horrible thing about being a playwright, is you produce so much, and all of your plays, they do feel like your children. You bring them into being, you nurture them through creation, and then you let them out into the world. And I think the one that always stands out to that definition for me is Believe Me, which is a crime and drama piece I wrote way back in September 2021. It was written as part of one of my many player day challenges because, I'm a sucker for punishment and just relish in that kind of thing. It was inspired by the word fence, and this young woman's brother turns up in the middle of the night with scratches on his face and a story about an accident with a woman, followed shortly by the arrival of the police. And she has to make the decision about where she will go to protect her family, hence the sitting on the fence idea. But as I say, it started as 11 pages. It was then expanded to 25 in April 2022 when it was performed locally and at a One Act Play Festival where it won Best Original Script, which was just an amazing feeling. I've previously said that, awards shouldn't be as big a deal as they are, but at that moment I was like, yay, I won. And yeah, from there it expanded to full length and then became a 4-part audio play on YouTube in October 2022. And then most recently, in May of 2024, it was published by Next Stage Press. So it's had
Congratulations.
Welcome to the family.
Thank you.
Yay!
Yeah, this is the thing. It's had its journey, and part of me thinks the journey isn't actually quite finished. I constantly read back through it and think there are things that I could change. I would love to have the full-length version done live. As of yet, that's still a pipe dream, but to get it from an 11-page infancy to a full-length 4-part series on YouTube and to be published is, the full playwright's journey as far as I'm concerned. Do you guys have favorites? I'm retaliating now.
Of course we have favorites. We have probably lots of favorites. I'll give you, mine is probably the very first piece I ever wrote, just simply because it was my gateway play, right? It was the one that opened the door. My daughter had just gone off to college. I was teaching humanities and creative writing, and I thought, I should write a play. So I wrote it and it was produced, and it's going to be, I've got a production coming this fall to local theater. It's called Follow Your Art. It's a youth play, Kids Lost in a Museum. I have a background in art history and writing, so it was kind of like everything came together. And so it's nice for it all these years later to have a new life coming up this fall. So yeah.
Well, obviously, Deb, one of my favorites of yours was Stalk Patrol, which obviously we did way back in season 1 because it was so pertinent at the time, and it was
still one of my favorites too, because like I told you before, I wrote it out of rage, and when you write with rage, sometimes it pays off, sometimes you just cut to the point you need to get to. So thank you, Rachel.
Bob, what about you? Favorites? No favorites?
So I've been doing this a long time and I get bored of my work easy. So I have temporary favorites. I think my most recent favorite, between August of 22 and October of 23, I did 16 90-minute radio shows, one play a month, never repeated. Dana wrote one of my favorite series from that, which is absolutely brilliant, which should be out soon. I just got the audio for it from the theater. So it was a live action, obviously, because we're plays, but it was a live radio show, 1930s, with a through plot. So you could show up to the first show or the 16th and you'd see the same characters living their life in this 1930s radio station, presenting original series from the time period, all of which we wrote. So we presented them all as new original series live from 1933 radio station in Balderdash County. which is my comedy ensemble. And so I ended up playing a character, Leo Gladstone, the incompetent, bumbling station manager and host. Yeah, in that series of shows, there was a couple of radio series that are some of the favorite pieces I ever wrote. One is I'll focus on one. It's the Amethyst Ghost, which is a superhero who gains her power through the power of yoga. The mystic Indian art of
Yes, I've
yoga.
read that one and I enjoyed that one. That's a fun one. You're right. And what I love about Bob's works is like that particular piece. I think we talked about that one. I'm so glad you brought it up. These characters, these female characters, are very strong, determined, full arc characters. So bravo on that, because
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
and they're fun too. And I love that period piece.
I remember when I first joined New Play Exchange, way back in the depths of lockdown. I think Bob's work was the first I discovered on New Play Exchange, and I cannot remember the title of the play now, which is really annoying me.
That's okay. I probably
Um,
won't either.
but my favorite one of yours was a Christmas elf who goes to try and work for the mafia.
The Naughty List. She
Yes!
leaves the North Pole to join the mob.
But yeah, like I said, it was one of the first things I think I read on New Play Exchange, and it was a hell of a way to start.
I wrote that for a sketch comedy troupe. We had a new performer show up and she needed a show. So I went home that night, wrote it, and she started rehearsing it the next day.
George's plays have such an interesting balance to
Yes.
them.
Correct. Agreed.
Maria and little Joey have a baby. I freaking love this play. And it's on Theatrical Shenanigans, and I'm not just saying that because I was fortunate to be a part of it. It has one of my favorite monologues. Maria's monologue when she's talking to that baby has like moved me to tears at times hearing that and working with that. And
It's
I
not
just
that badly written.
no, it is. Everyone should immediately listen and ignore my terrible accent in it, but it's such a fun piece and also a suspenseful piece. But like you have these moments in your works, and I've read so many of them and more historical pieces I've read, but this one in particular, this one stays with me. So we're talking about some favorite works of each other's. Maria and little Joey have a baby, so catch that on Theatrical Shenanigans as well. It's a good one.
I
Nice
am so
soundscape.
blushing over here. Oh my gosh.
Well, no, my
Sorry.
favorite moment of that piece was when Maria says to him, "So that's what makes me different from a man my age, having a baby." And he looks at her and goes, "You really want to discuss sexual politics right now?" And I think it was the way that Darren Ingram phrased it, but it was just a brilliant comeback. It was just brilliantly written. It was fabulous. George, what about you and favorites and
It's always a very hard question because usually my favorite is whatever I'm working on now. And right now, for the first time in probably 4 years, I'm in between. I've finished all my shorts. I've got the drafts done. I need to sit down and work them out and get table reads and hear them through reality. But I would have to go back to one of my very early plays, which is called Ghosts. And it's my third play and the one that kept me going as a playwright. I sent it out. This is back in the day when you had to make 3 copies and do
Right.
return envelopes and spend the milk money on postage. Ghosts is it was the first non-comedy that I wrote. It's pretty dark. It has several ghosts. Takes place in New Orleans. Has an underlying theme of child abuse. And it took me a while to write this one because it was very painful to get out. And I sent it out. And I get a phone call one day. And I had just gotten 2 rejection slips in the mail, so you can tell what kind of day I was having at that particular point. And Mr. Sapio, this is Dr. James Panowski from Northern Michigan University. We'd like to tell you that your play Ghosts has won our competition. And before I could stop myself, I was like, "Are you shitting me?" He's like, "No, Mr. Sapio. we'd like to bring you out here for a week in the summer to workshop the
Wow.
play. I had no idea what the hell workshopping was.
Wow. Wow.
And then fly you back out here in November for for the production. And I'm thinking, there's in the back of my head, there's my brain going, slapping me, going, just say yes. And they did that. They flew me out in the summer and they introduced me to a process called workshopping, which I'd never heard of before,
Yeah.
where we have table reads and people comment on it. And I realize, oh, I could make this better. Oh, I could do that. And it was probably the single most beneficial theater experience I've ever had. And nothing else has come close to equaling it that particular week
Yeah.
because the director was Dr. Panowski, and he was fantastic. There was a dramaturg, Doug Hill from Nevada, and all the actors were some of the best I've ever seen. They were astute, they knew what they were talking about, and my play absolutely benefited from it. So that and the 5 performances we had in November, all of which were sold out. Oh, and also the $2,000 check they gave me for actually
Look at
writing
you.
this nonsense. Yeah, right?
That's nice.
Wow.
So yeah,
Was
that
that your
was,
first payday?
yeah, it was actually.
That's
It's,
a hell of a story, man. That's awesome.
um, it hasn't been equaled yet, but yeah, so I'm going to have to say that's probably my favorite play. And honestly, I haven't looked at it in years, and I should probably start sending it out again.
But for me, and I totally agree with Dana, George has an incredible collection of plays, and they are
Yeah.
amazing and they are varied. But one that sticks out to me, and only because it appeared after we read something that I'd written at Literary Discourse Society, was George's play Quack.
Oh, that's a
gosh.
good one. That's a good one.
So funny.
Yeah.
That's a
It's
good
the
one.
only play where you will ever have to sing in Quack.
It's the only musical I've ever written.
It's just, I was like, I honestly couldn't keep a straight face. It was so funny. And I think
I,
that's the thing, is that there's some, especially in today's society, there's a lot of pressure on plays being dramatic or political. And I just think sometimes you just need something that's going to make you laugh.
Absolutely. Yeah. Graham Greene had this distinction between the things that he wrote, where he said they were entertainments or they were serious work. And I kind of look at my own stuff that way. I mean, there are the ones that all of us. I mean, I'm sitting here in a group of some of the most remarkable playwrights I've ever come across. And you guys are being very generous with your praise towards me, and I totally appreciate it. But honestly, I feel like I'm just awash in talent in this little Zoom meeting here because I've read all of your works, and there hasn't been a time when each of you has not managed to kick my butt across the room with something that's been so brilliantly
Wow.
written.
Wow.
So thank you all for that. But then again, there's Quack, which is, I mean, seriously, that falls under the forget about the subtext, just play for fun kind of thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's genuinely just like, honestly, I don't think it's genuinely impossible not to have fun when reading Quack, much less performing it. I mean, I could never perform Quack live, mainly because I'd never be able to keep a straight face.
Yeah, but you've done it.
I have. I've done it, but I've not kept a straight face.
See, I always tend to classify shows into 2 groups. There's drama and there's therapy. Comedy is, if you want to be a better writer of drama, learn comedy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Number one, it's how humans deal with trauma, so you get it closer to the psyche. The other thing is that if you can make your audience or your reader laugh, you control their emotions.
Mm.
Laughter is it completely drops their guard, and
Yeah.
now you can control the scenes. You can control what
I
they
totally
feel.
agree with you, Bob. It's so
Yes.
underrated, the amount of talent it takes to write and be funny and to endear. Comedy is that equalizer. It's that moment where we drop our guard, and when we use it in context with
Hmm.
drama or
Yeah.
tragedy, that we have them there and they're one of us, and we can then get into other vehicles. So it's so interesting. And it's often we see this time and time again as actors and performers that, oh, it's a comedy. It will get written off. But to get that engagement is so huge and psychological. And it's a balance because especially if
Yeah.
you have heavy pieces to kind of balance your audience. We hear this in our
Right.
world about taking care of our audience.
Mhm.
And if you hit them
Hmm.
over the head over and over again with no relief, eventually they're laughing at things that aren't funny. They're just laughing as a pressure release valve versus if you give them a little bit of that humor, they can let that out so they can absorb more
Yeah.
because we only have so much capacity. So I
Mm.
love that conversation on that balance. And I think that's as we talk about George's pieces, I love that because that piece is like that. It's like that pressure release valve where we don't even realize what we're really getting into. And then when you sit with it and you talk about it, you're like, oh, this there's subtext, there's this, there's that. But also you're playing, so as actors, you're fully invested and going for
Yeah.
it. So I love that. Yeah, that's important.
Well, and speaking of taking care of our audiences, Dana is one of the best. Let's just put that
Oh
out
yeah,
there.
absolutely.
Her pieces are so poignant, so powerful, so thought provoking. So I need to know, Dana, what's your favorite piece you've written? What have you
You beat me to
selected?
it
Well, so as I talk about comedies, I'm gonna go with the one that isn't. So I don't write many full-length shows, but one of my full lengths, One Night in September, is this year's on the list for Lanford Wilson finalists.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
Congratulations.
then.
Yeah.
One
Wow,
Night in
that's great.
September was a very therapeutic piece for me, and I wrote it in a way that I normally don't write, and in that I just wrote the piece and I did not proof the piece when I sent the piece to Lanford Wilson. And I thought, well,
Wow.
I'm just sending it out. The only proof I did was Deb hosted a small meeting around reading first scenes,
Right.
and I submitted my first scene, and we read it together, and the feedback there was very positive and it was very much go forward. And that was the only editing I did. I don't necessarily recommend that as you send your works out for major competition, but this particular piece was a little too close to home for me to go through that editing process. And it was just an accomplishment I wanted to send out. And it happened to pay off. I don't measure, as playwrights, we like to not measure in the feedback that we get back in terms of finalists and this, but it's nice to have a nod. And
Yeah.
for me, One Night in September is an advocacy piece about sexual assault on college campuses.
Mm,
And it has moments in it where it can be a call to action. So for me, that's particularly important. Another one of my favorites, though, that has the humor element is My Vagina Has a First Name, which
Yep.
we've done for theatrical shenanigans and we talked about during Women's International Day. And that is fun, and it's a group of women getting together. They're hard drinkers. They love each other. They're at a fake book club, and they're talking about their bodies. They're talking about real life. They're talking about subtext of societal expectations on women, but it's fun, and you can let your guard down. And that one was done for a Planned Parenthood fundraiser in LA, and it's one of my favorite pieces. Um, and there's a lot of laughs in that one. So I think that's the balance that I try to strike in these shows is like advocacy is important to me, but just as important is engagement and a coming together, and especially strong female characters having
yeah.
strong, important roles.
I have a favorite Dana comedy
Oh
that I
no.
actually got to perform in. It's called Gilded Obsession. I'm like, do you want to do one of the radio shows? And she said, yes. Actually, it was I'm drowning here. She's like, I'm going to save you. And she did.
It was my pleasure.
And it's absolutely brilliant. I'm not going to give too much away, except I had to figure out how to Foley a herd of falling cats live
Wow.
on stage.
Wow.
As you do.
Okay.
As you do.
As you
Yes,
do, you know.
as one does. He immediately regretted asking me to participate. No,
No,
and also how many cat related jokes can one get?
it's like pure 1930s Hollywood. It's like a mix decade, so it could be 30s, could be 40s. It's all almost noir. I'm just gonna put it's. I love it. I love it, but it's to the point too where I'm like, while I was reading it and trying to work it into the show, I'm like, okay, how could this be staged live? Like, how could we actually do this live as a full show? Yeah, yeah. So I'm biased.
I appreciate.
Going back to what Dana said about My Vagina Has a First Name, I adored this play from the minute it landed. I would say actually no, it didn't land. Again, it was a new play exchange read the first time, and then I was like, yes. When I knew I was going to be producing 4 plays for International Women's Day, I was like, yes, this has to be one. And the moment I love is when there's one point where they're talking about one of the women has been to the gynecologist, and she says, "Oh, just the good old yearly exam," and her friend responds with, the check engine light was on." I was just like, and then the thing is, from there it just gets even more bizarre because at that point one of her other friends starts voicing her vagina, so it gets crazier from there. But that moment is where it flits from a conversation to just bizarre.
Love it.
But as I say, there's no, as I say, there is no one in this room that doesn't have a favorite of mine and many other amazing plays.
Yeah.
I say I toot the new play exchange on
Yes.
a regular basis.
Yes.
I agree. I agree.
But if
Yes.
I say if
Yeah.
you are out there and you are looking for a play or just looking to read a play, honestly, new play exchange for
Mhm.
I mean, in American, the maximum you will pay is $18 a year. With
Yes.
bearing in
And
mind
it's a
So worth it. So worth
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see it as a master's degree in theater. I mean,
It
just
Yeah.
really
read.
is.
Read,
The
read,
access.
read. You learn so much for an $18. It doesn't get cheaper, that kind of education, than to read
Yeah.
amazing works that are out there. And some that aren't amazing, that's okay too, because you're learning from that too. We're all learning
Mhm.
Yeah.
together.
Like New Play Exchange is a resource that allows you to not only see how other people are doing it, but to find your favorite playwright.
Yeah.
Correct.
Your favorite play
Yeah.
will be on New Play Exchange. You just have to find it.
And it's
And
not
the
even
sense of
it's not even the
community.
plays, the number of connections you
Yeah.
make following that. As I say, I wouldn't know the 3 of you. I wouldn't have
Mhm.
met Joe Swenson, Jonathan Cook, DC
Yeah.
Cathro. There's just so many. It's insane the number of amazing playwrights there are out there.
Yeah.
And it baffles me. I genuinely, honestly, I think in the United Kingdom, new play exchange should be something that is encouraged at A level or AS and A level drama. I
I
really
think
Yeah.
there should be a
Yeah.
course on it just to
Yes.
explore the catalog, right? Get out there,
absolutely.
because the classics are so important, but there are so many new works that are
Mhm.
absolutely fabulous. And
Yeah.
until you dive into New Play Exchange, you're not going to know them
Yeah.
unless you happen to be lucky enough to come across a production. And it's so important as a young playwright, as an old playwright,
Yeah.
as an old first time playwright, whatever you are, get in there and read, read, read.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
You're going to find
playwriting,
stuff that is
yeah.
just so entertaining, so challenging,
Yes.
so new. And you know what the best part is no matter how old you get, you're never going to run out of material.
Yeah.
No.
Oh my God, there's more than 50,000 plays up there at this
Yeah.
particular point?
And also the sense of community that comes with that. It's a
Mm.
welcoming in. And as playwrights, we sit behind computers. There's more collaboration than ever nowadays, but it's still an isolated event for so much of the
Right.
process.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Because the New Play Exchange is fabulous for that catalog of work. New Play Connections is talking with other playwrights, right? Being aware of opportunities that are coming up, celebrating each other. Like Dana said, we sit alone in front of a
Yeah.
keyboard, and to have a connection to
Yeah.
someone that says, way to go. It's so simple, but it means so much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We needed a support group for our
Yeah.
Yeah.
profession is what it came down to.
We
Yeah.
can't rely on funding to validate us. We can't rely on festival to validate us. Our voices are important regardless. And when you
Yes.
have a community that continues to embrace each other and to celebrate these stories and narratives, and to know that your work isn't just going into the abyss, but someone held it. George read my play. My play has a life.
Yeah.
It lived with his thoughts, his feelings, and Deb and Rachel
Hmm.
and Bob. Like, that's amazing sense. If that play just touches one person, even if they don't like it, they experienced it. They had an
Yeah.
experience with your work. And so fostering a community where we can share these collective experiences and celebrate those opportunities when we do get the pat on the back from the external source is lovely. But I
Right.
hate to see playwrights shut down and leave because they haven't received that external validation, which is so
Yeah.
important as a human.
Hmm.
But we can do that for each other to keep these
Right.
narratives alive. Yeah.
Yeah. New Play Exchange, one of the benefits of it and what's reinforced in the Playwright Connection is it teaches gratitude.
Absolutely.
It teaches appreciation. And that gratitude and appreciation is what builds and maintains community and a healthy community. It's
Mm.
why we have it's why we have a community on Facebook of all places that
Right.
is not toxic. Like, how did that happen, right? Like,
But that was very purposeful, is my guess, from you guys, the
yeah,
original founders.
Yeah.
You saw that there was so much ugliness that you weren't going to create a space for that. That wasn't your intention.
no,
Yeah.
it's a kindness and support. That's all it is. It's be the person you most needed on the day of your worst rejection.
Yeah.
Be a
Yeah.
mentor. Tear down the walls that prevented you from getting produced.
Bob, your question.
So I have a question very specific to you in particular. My Chatter, just us two,
Okay.
two collections of plays, right? Available on your Etsy store, link in the
Mhm.
description, or it better be. So you've published your own collections. What was it like, right? Describe your self-publishing journey. What takeaways did you learn? What would you do differently next time? What is your recommendation for licensing when you release your own collection?
um okay, the journey was expensive and stressful, but honestly, there is no better feeling than when you hold your own book in your hands for the first time. um I know I know obviously a lot of people who publish will say, it's easier to have someone else do the publishing for you. Um, but it's not always an option. Publishers have guidelines, they have rules, you may not be of interest to them. And I just decided that this was something that I needed to do, and it was like my next step along the road, I guess. So I did My Chatter, which was 10 comedy plays, and then Just As Two, which was 10 plays for two people. And they sold, well, they sold all over the world. And obviously a lot of them were sold through the connections for the people that I know. George bought both. Um, it,
Gotta
it
have them.
it took them about 17 years to get there, but
Well, true, but yeah.
But then I also got orders from people. I think that was the most incredibly exciting thing, when you got an order and you look at the name and think, I don't know this person. I've not met this person. This person's buying my book. And I did, from drama societies across the UK who just bought my book to read them with their societies. And yeah, it's an incredible feeling. And obviously you have to make the initial financial outlay because there's no two ways of going about it. And you probably I would say I broke even, maybe. I think that was the one I say things I do differently would keep better control of my finances.
Mm.
Excel spreadsheets have become my friends, but they weren't back then. Um, um, but yeah, it was just it's an amazing feeling, and I think on the grand scheme of things, it's not that expensive. It cost me, I think it was just over 100 UK pounds to get 50 prints of when I did My Chatter. And obviously you have to it's a bit of a balancing game. You have to balance how much you charge with the postage and that kind of thing.
Mm.
But at the same time, there's no better feeling than knowing your work is out there with people who have enjoyed it. Because there were some people who bought the first one and then came back and bought the second one. Again, people I didn't know. So it's an amazing feeling. As far as things I do differently goes, most of them are hindered by, lack of money. Because I'd love to have someone else deal with the marketing and someone else deal with the dispatch. But, if I'd done that, I wouldn't have the feeling of putting each book into its envelope. I mean, I hand printed letters for every book that was sent out with the number of the book they'd bought that was signed by me saying, thank you for supporting my work. You wouldn't get that with a mass publisher. You just don't. So I think if you're someone out there who wants to get your work out there, it's definitely a viable route, but do not under any circumstances think it's easy.
What
Because
was the hardest part of the process?
I think it's pushing it because I don't like doing the whole, this is my book, it's amazing, buy my book, because it sounds a bit plastic.
Self-serving?
Yeah. I don't like self-marketing. I'm very bad at it. That's why I hide behind my lovely smiley face, the actual Shenanigans logo. But you have to do it because otherwise, people don't buy your book because people don't know about your book.
Yeah.
It's why I say when I bought George's book, I made it my business to say, buy this book. And any guest who I have interviewed on Theatrical Shenanigans who has a book or has a book coming out, I make it my business to share their links because, there are hundreds of thousands of books out there on, varying topics and varying subjects, and it's so hard to push your own material out of the water. And if fellow playwrights won't do that for you, then it makes it so much more difficult. And that's why I think it's every episode of Theatrical Shenanigans I ask for ratings and reviews and that kind of thing, and it's not for a pat on the back and it's not to inflate my ego, but it's to get the show out there, because the more I can get the show out there, the more the playwrights I produce can be heard.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's definitely viable if you've got the finances to do it and you've got the passion to do it. It's definitely worthwhile, in my opinion.
The hardest part of playwriting is always marketing.
Yeah.
Without
Absolutely.
a doubt. Without a doubt.
But if you don't do it, how is anyone ever going to hear your words? I mean, to some extent, we're
It's
all
true.
We're all out there grabbing for the next ear, the next person, just to give it a chance, just because, we have to. And it feels self-serving and it feels icky sometimes, but it is the reality of the game.
Yeah.
Based on what Rachel said, practice talking about your work. Talk to people about your work.
Yeah.
Learning to speak about what you've created is so important. And I know as a playwright, we hold this whole world. We have multiple characters, we have the dynamics, and we create this thing. And then people are like, what's your play about? And you're like, people. And it sounds like we
emotions.
Right. It's just that we're holding all of these worlds together to facilitate this creation. And then we're asked about our work and we're almost dumbfounded. We're not, but we are. It's like, it reminds me of like traffic on an expressway, but like there's only one lane. And in our mind, all these cars that we want to see, all the things want to get out there, but we can't. We're almost blocked, in the explanation. So synopsises, whether you choose to use them in your scripts or not, I recommend writing them so that you know what you're going to say when someone asks you about your piece.
The hardest question to answer is, what kind of plays do you write?
Yeah.
Right.
Where do I start?
No. I can't. I don't agree. The most horrifying question that I've ever been asked to date is, where do you get your ideas from? I can't explain it without sounding like a crazy person.
Well, right, but we're all
playwrights.
crazy.
We're crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. You
Duh,
don't
I
want to
believe.
know where these
Inspiration
ideas
from.
come from.
So when it comes to
Yeah.
marketing, one thing that I do with all of my every single show I write, right before you're done with the show, you're writing the character descriptions. Right before I write the character descriptions, I write a tagline that whoever produces it can use in advertising. And I write a synopsis. And the synopsis needs to be really no more than 2 sentences. I want something that I can, 1 sentence to hook them, and then a 2-second elevator. That's
There it
all I
is.
want.
Yeah.
And that's in every single show I write.
I remember doing a podcast, and it was a group of playwrights, and mostly it was like the female playwrights of the group. We were almost like apologizing for writing our work. I'm sorry, but if you want to read this, almost like, and we're like, why are we doing that? Like
Right.
we're, it's
Yeah.
almost like we're sorry to even take your time, but no, we have to learn to take up space, and that's okay to take up space. And
Absolutely.
Mhm.
and that's important, and we deserve that, and that's not without humility. You can absolutely be humble, and also be able to speak about your piece. And so yes, everyone listening, grab your play, read it, and then practice pitching that play to someone. One of
Yep.
us, perhaps reach out to someone in the Playwright Connection. But try to do that, and also maybe a little bit spend some time on your artistic statement. It's not so much
Yes.
asked for unless you're going into a competitive situation generally, but learning how to define yourself as a writer, and you don't have to pigeonhole yourself, but it's a good exercise in self-reflection, especially when you're trying to kind of find your way in this crazy little world of
Yeah.
art. I think it's important to sit back and reflect and have something to be able to define yourself with.
And this is going to sound selfish, but it's kind of okay to say to yourself, what am I good at when I write? What are my
Yes.
strengths? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you don't have to tell anyone else if you're uncomfortable with it, but take a moment and say, why am I good at what I do? What is it that I do that no one else can do the way I do it? That has
Mhm.
power for us also.
Mhm.
We don't have to put it out that way, but it's something to know to recognize what we're good at doing is really important.
Yeah. One extra
Right.
tip for marketing, self-marketing in particular,
Mhm.
write down a list of questions that producers are going to search for to find your show. 100% of my paid licensed shows per year come from use of keywords, knowing what people want to look for,
Oh, that's
and
brilliant.
knowing
Yeah.
how to get them to my stuff. If you sit down and write just a list of Google questions that you think should bring your show up to them, and then make sure to use those terms, those terminology, that pathway within your language on your website,
Mhm.
in the show description, that's going to get you productions. Guaranteed that's going to get you productions.
I have a great example. I'm on Rachel Feeney Williams' new play Exchange, and I was fortunate to play Vivian in Affairs, which is one of my favorite roles as an actor, to step out of myself, and I play a madam in that. Um, and the keywords on New Play Exchange forces you to do a little bit of what Bob's saying, where you have to have your synopsis, and within loading your work, you're asked a few different things. And one of them is subject matter keywords.
Yeah.
Rachel's keywords are prostitution, extramarital affairs, confrontations, secrets, lies, and money. So if that doesn't hook you,
That's a
um,
synopsis.
uh,
Yeah.
that can help playwrights also kind of represent their work through the reflection of others. Because sometimes you're right, we're too close to the piece. And we just can't get there. But hearing what other people say can maybe help us to identify, and then, as Bob is saying, be able to market that
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get that work out there.
Okay. Deb, your question.
Well, theatrical shenanigans has been such a gift to so many of us, playwrights, actors. I hope producers and directors. I hope people are listening to find pieces because it's such a gift. But my question to you, Rachel, is: did you have a background in video editing and audio editing before you jumped into this, or did you just have the huevos to do it? What's your backstory on this?
God, no. My kind of introduction to audio editing was when we did when I was part of Literary Discourse Society. There were a couple of plays of mine that we did that I recorded just as on Zoom, and then I took that recording and put it together with some slides of the lines on YouTube so you could still read it as well as listen to it, and just kind of put those out there on YouTube. And I did like a couple of those. I did one that was produced by Surfside Playhouse, and I did one that was pulled from a recording of a live production. And then I kind of decided that by that point I'd developed Believe Me into a full-length production, and I thought, I want this to be heard, I want this to be performed, and if it's not going to get out there into a theatre, then I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it my way. So I got my actors together. Three of them were actually in one of the productions that was in the Hen and Chickens Theatre in London. So I gathered them all together on Zoom and recorded it, and again it was kind of piecing it together, but it was very much a kind of learning as I went. I knew how I wanted it to sound, and I knew how it needed to be, and it was kind of getting from point A to point Z. Theatrical Shenanigans has become a whole new ballpark, because at least with when I did Believe Me, the actors were in the same virtual room. I consider myself incredibly lucky because I found a group or several amazing voice actors who are able to just perform one half of a conversation, or even in some cases, 1/4 of a conversation, having no idea who they're actually in the room with. And then I piece it together like the most frustrating jigsaw puzzle, until it sounds the way I want it to sound. One thing that stands out for me was when we did Coming In, which actually Bob and I chatted about in season 1. Georgette played the wife, and she had no idea who her husband was until she heard it when it went live. She went, oh. And that's the thing, most actors have no idea who they are dealing with until it goes live, unless they are actors who specifically requests to want to get together, which is, that's absolutely fine. But otherwise it's very much pieced together. And you imagine trying to do that live, it would be absolutely blooming impossible. But you try rehearsing without your scene partner there on a stage, you can't do it. And as I say, I consider myself so lucky that I've had the people that I've had who just know how to work the emotions, work the lines. If there are any questions, they've always come back to me. But I say there are so many. I obviously can't name them all, but I say Darren Ingram's done some amazing work for me, Robert Sawyer, George, Dana, yourself, obviously, Deb. And you just think it's a really comforting feeling when you open up a play script and think, I know exactly who I can get to do this and can make it work. The only thing you have to pray for is that they're actually, got some time in their very busy schedule to do it. Because say Jacqueline Floyd Priscon's done quite a lot for me, and she is a very busy woman. So you just kind of sit there and pray, because at the end of the day, people are donating their time. I say I would love to be able to afford to pay my voice actors, but I can't. And it's at that point where you do feel like you're going around with the begging bowl going, can you do this for me, please?
You give so much to us, so when you
Right.
ask, we know where it's coming from. And that's the other
Absolutely.
thing too. Like when you do ask, and I know, you have these pieces in front of you and you have to find the right voice for it. And I want to encourage people that want to be a part of that. It's okay if you put yourself out there and Rachel says that she's going to go in a different direction or this or that. That's okay. And if you submit your piece to her or someone else and it doesn't fit for those needs, hearing you speak about the process, I think people start to
Yeah.
understand why. And it's not a
Mm,
rejection of you as a playwright or you as a voice actor. It's that Rachel has to hold all of these pieces together and has to make a show that represents that particular piece. And there have
Yeah.
been times I've
yeah.
auditioned and it just wasn't the right fit. And then I'll get an email, oh, could you do this for me? Like, oh, because you heard that from this other thing. And I just encourage people to just stay open and not to see rejection as necessarily a bad thing, but as a you don't know all of the pieces behind, whether it's a
Hmm.
festival or whether it's the podcast. You just don't have all the moving pieces, and that's okay. Do what
Yeah.
you do and just know that you doing good work stays with people, and that's worth it, whether it's
And
in
staying
or out.
gracious and staying,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
open.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's huge because if you let ego get a hold of you and you get
Yes.
all pissy about things, the opportunities close really quickly. But
Hmm.
meanwhile, if you're in there giving what you can give, supporting those around you,
Hmm.
the doors will open. You just have to be patient.
It's training yourself to hear not yet instead of no.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There's been times where, as creatives, we don't say no enough in our own lives. We have a tendency not to say no. And wouldn't it be
Yeah.
nice sometimes to say no? And that's okay. And it's okay for others to say no to us too, without that being a judgment on our personhood.
It's not
And
right.
just
It's not
remembering
personal.
that,
Right.
yeah, there's other
Oh,
pieces that you don't know about.
that was the thing. When theatrical shenanigans started, I decided kind of this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to produce, you know, 10 episodes with 10 different plays and talk to 10 different people about said plays. And all I did was go to the connections I'd made on New Play Exchange, as I say, with a begging bowl and go, can you spare like an hour or two or a play and maybe and it's gone from that to, I would say, season 3, which obviously we're partway through at the minute, had 300 submissions.
That's
Hmm.
huge.
Hmm.
Amazing,
And
Yeah.
Rachel.
it's like
Yeah.
I never in my wildest dreams when I started this thought that was going to be, I always thought I was going to have to struggle to find, content at all. But you get people emailing in, and the weirdest thing for me was when you get emails starting, dear artistic director,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Hmm.
sorry, who?
It's your
There's no
other hat.
shortage of material out there that you can ask
Absolutely
for it.
not.
You go.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it
I,
also comes the chore, not the chore. I mean, it is a privilege to get all the submissions, but it's a lot of work to read
Oh,
all of
hmm.
them and to figure out which ones are going to work together, which ones are
Yep.
producible
yeah.
on that platform.
I
It's
think
not easy.
that's the hard thing because you have to,
Yeah.
because when I started running the submissions competitions page, you notice that sometimes there are no guidelines and sometimes there are like way too many. So it's trying to
Yeah.
find that balance in between of letting people know what you're looking for without, stifling them. Like for me, mostly it's about the realism of it. Can it be produced via audio? So,
Hmm.
a million visual stage directions just aren't going to work.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
length, and that's it. There's
well,
very
and
little else.
you're balancing genre and you're
Yep.
balancing themes, and no one sees that you have a like Dana said, this bigger scope to look at as
Yeah.
opposed to this one piece, right? So that's a big task to do.
Yeah. I find it's better to be as specific as possible. Tell them what you
Yes.
want,
Yeah.
right? And it's the on stage, off stage, you just put out a call for play readings for this year, which I'm still getting around to. But I got close to 200.
Yeah.
And like you said, I have to read all those. And then
Right.
I have to decide out of those 200, fully 40% did not adhere to the guidelines.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Titling wasn't right. The subject matter wasn't right. Number of characters wasn't right. The page limit wasn't right. I got one that had 22 pages. I asked for 10. So those are easy to get rid of.
Yeah.
right? It's the ones that are actually really good
Yeah.
and the ones that resonate with you, which is what I mean by really good, okay? Because my really good is not your really good. But it comes down to the last 25, and it is a nightmare
Yeah.
sorting through. Then you got to look at, like you said, who's available? Who do I have who can read this part? What's, you
Hmm.
know, is, and yeah, it is not an easy thing to do.
Even just Foley costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those sound effects, if you're using canned sound effects and you're not doing them live or going out and getting them yourself, they're expensive. Even if
Yeah.
you are a member of like Production Crate or Pond 5 and you have access to stock sound, they're not cheap at
Yeah. Eight
all.
ninety nine for one sound effect.
Yeah. I had
I
a
mean, times how many plays are you going to do?
exactly. Or how many times can you use it? What are the limitations
Yeah.
of it? Will
Right.
you get flagged for using that in the future for copyright violation if I mean they're Serpent Sound sold part of their catalog to a larger group. Now everything you use, is it Serpent Sound? It's one of them. Everything you use with that as a theme song will get flagged on YouTube for copyright violation, even though you own the license. This is all the stuff you got to think of when you're producing a podcast
Mm-hmm.
with an audio fiction podcast. It's not easy. I mean, the considerations that go into selection alone prevent some people from even starting.
And the thing for me as well is that obviously like a lot I get submissions from obviously a lot of familiar names. So
Mhm.
names I know, names I've read, names I've encountered before, and it's it's hard to because the problem is when you've produced a playwright before, it's very difficult to have to put the argument of, well, I've produced them before, should I produce them again? Even though the
Yeah.
play is amazing. And I had that so many times with this current season. As I say, when I did my last series of mini shenanigans, I did 2 of Dana's plays. And I was very much aware of how that may look to, other playwrights out there who submitted. But when it came down to it, both plays were spectacular. I was not going to turn away either plays on the basis that people will feel what they feel. It's that simple, and I think that's the other thing it's definitely about developing a thick skin.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah.
as I
Well,
say,
nobody can fault you for taking 2 Dana Hall plays. Come on.
I
Right.
mean,
That's
that is
that's
true.
that's
But
always a winning decision.
there's
You did
also
2 plays by
something
the same person. It was Dana. Oh, okay, that's fine.
Oh, okay, you're fine.
there's also something to be said about having the integrity to go for the best show
Yeah,
for the podcast rather than I can't take this because I've already produced them.
Yeah.
If you have somebody who writes of a quality that speaks to you and your audience
Mhm.
that you can produce, don't give yourself any limitations on that. You do it,
yeah,
And if
It
somebody
changes,
accuses you
yeah.
of something that doesn't exist, know
Yeah.
that it's a blind accusation from somebody who doesn't know the truth and
Mm-hmm.
move on from it.
And I can tell you,
Yeah.
I've been rejected many times from theatrical shenanigans as an artist, as a performance artist, as well as a writer. And when you're looking for the work that's the best of the best that you want to do for your season, it's your integrity on the line. It's not someone
Yes.
else's name.
Right.
And
Right.
so and it's hard because I think we go to anyone who kind of calls out things like that. One, they don't know what goes into it.
Hmm.
Two, it might be the sense of we don't know what just came in their inbox that day.
Right.
Some opportunities that they were
Yeah.
rejected from, they're feeling some type of way. It's really hard
Yes.
for us as playwrights, as artists, not to project that outward. And that's why we keep saying be involved in community, find your
Hmm.
strengths, because
Yeah.
yes, it's gonna still suck, it's gonna hurt a rejection,
Yes.
but also what's bigger than that is knowing what you're continuing to put out there. And like Bob said, the not yets, and that's okay. I've
Mhm.
had a lot of not yets, I'm still in not yets. And you know invest in you and go, oh, celebrate the works, listen to the podcast. I cannot, there's been folks who don't listen and then have some kind of judgment or whatever. Listen to the works, absorb
Yes.
what is going on.
Correct.
Submit
Yeah.
the guidelines. You just heard George and Rachel talk about the guidelines and how many submissions they receive. And Bob has done this as well in his company. They're just giving you this valuable insight into what they're looking for. Don't make it hard for them. Make it
Yeah.
real easy. And if you have a play that somewhat fits, make it fit better. If
Yeah.
put the onus on what you're doing and not allowing for them to have to use this imagination on it. But if your play is better for the stage, it's better for the stage. That's okay.
Yes.
Not every stage
Yeah.
play should be adapted. And so knowing your work is really important. And I think that's what Deb, when she teaches, is also teaching people is find their voice and find the way that you can get your medium across most effectively.
Yeah.
And that's okay that it may not be this or that. It's all self-discovery. So, yeah, I'm so glad we're having this conversation about behind the scenes because
Mhm.
I think this
Yeah.
really goes across the gamut of not just theatrical shenanigans, but all of these festival opportunities that are out there and giving people some insight into the hows and whys.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I just wanted to add one more piece about the production side while we have three powerhouse
Yes.
production folks on. Um, that vicariously, Deb and I can attest to this. We've had sidebar conversations about the self sacrifice that goes in for you all to be able to do what you do, to bring these works out. The fact that it takes away from your own writing, your personal life, your sense of personhood when people can be not so nice about some of the behind the scenes production aspects. Like we have watched, and we're proud to be your friends and to be there for you through this process. But I think it's important to put faces on these organizations too,
Yeah.
and that these are passionate artists that are trying to uplift, spread the voice of others, and it costs them. And as we can see, unfortunately, it's not as lucrative as we would like it to be. But it's a labor of love, and I really hope people hear that. And when they decide to start their own, if they should do so, to find that balance in their life and to know kind of the behind the scenes that it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you on some personal levels and your creative level. How much of your creative self are you going to put into this? And will there be enough for you to continue your creative projects? Because that's important as a creative that we nurture that aspect. We can yes and only so much. There needs to be some
Yeah.
limitation so that you can have your art as well out there.
One
Thank you for all that you guys do. Thank you, really.
And then one final thing on the support, if I could say anything to anyone who listens to any podcast out there, especially if it's non-mainstream, give it a rating.
Yes.
Give it a review or a recommendation. It takes 2 minutes of your day. And I get it, sometimes people don't want to, rate everything that they listen to. But if you're listening to a podcast that's got, 4 ratings, your 5th rating is going to mean a hell of a lot to someone.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, George, your question.
So my question to you, Rachel, is you've got, I don't know, what, 1.5 billion plays out there, and
209, George, don't exaggerate.
well, it's only a little exaggeration. What has self-production done for you, and what was that experience like, seeing your plays go through that kind of a process?
I have been incredibly lucky in the sense that my local drama society have self-produced several of my plays, but as far as it goes, I always err on the side of caution. Again, I actually mentioned this to Bob in our very first chat in season 1 about playwrights being precious about their work, and I have been guilty of that, which is why very early on, I think in my second experience of self-producing, I always have a second set of eyes. Someone who has little to no knowledge of the play prior to it becoming a production, someone who is not me, because sometimes you need it. It's that simple. Someone else might see something that you don't, that could make the play better from a production perspective. And personally, I would never want to walk away from a production thinking I had the chance to make it better and didn't because I was a prima donna playwright who didn't want to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say it's on a more realistic side of things, I've learned it's an expensive venture because unfortunately the realistic side of things is when you're not a, and I use air quotes, well-known playwright, you have to push more on the marketing side of things, and you have to accept that maybe you're not going to sell out. You know, there's that initial buzz of excitement when they first say we're going to produce your play, to think, oh my god, I'm going to sell out a 400,000 seat concert hall. It's like, maybe not. And it's, as I said before, it's the same with the podcast. It's a project of passion. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
But it's not, you have to accept that it's not going to be necessarily if you produce it, they will come scenario. But if you love the play and you go into it as a project of love, then no matter how many people there are, and it could be 10 or thousands of people, you will feel amazing when that curtain first goes up. And you look at that stage thinking, I did that.
Yeah.
That's the one major piece of advice I would say to anyone looking to self-produce. Do not see it as a labor of fortune, because you will fall bitterly disappointed. Unless you have major financial backing, you will fall disappointed. But if you go into it as a labor of love, the amazing feeling won't change, regardless of how many people are out there.
And it doesn't matter where in your career, by the way.
No.
I've been doing it so I've been performing for 30 years, writing for 32 years, producing for about 25. And last year, I went from a mystery with 200 people. And then the next night, I did one of those radio shows I was talking about, and it had 6.
Yeah.
It happens, especially post-COVID. It's hard to get people to leave their house. Yeah. And it's down all around.
Leaving people's houses. Like, I remember doing the production of Deborah Cole's Divine Truth, and we did that for Power
Yeah,
Stories.
you and George were both in that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
George and I
remember
were in
that.
that. And that stands out to me. You know, we were fortunate to be able to do that on Zoom and to have that presentation and platform through Power Stories, which is a wonderful organization in Florida. And it still stands out to be one of those pieces that stay with you long after you've read it and performed in it. It has this intensity, this Christian Science and this grief and this family and parenting and marriage and all of this. And you know what? It was self-produced. It was a powerful platform to use, and we got that message out there and we were able to do that. And so sometimes I hear self-production getting kind of a negative rap. As long as the things that, Rachel mentioned and Bob mentioned about finances and having realistic expectation and the right motivation, um, you can really do some powerful things. And just because you're self-producing it doesn't take away the value of it. And I think we need to get away from that. Any vehicle to get the work out there is important and valid, and you can do it at any point in your career. And that's the powerful thing about the voices and the narratives that we have, is that they're ours, and how we get them out there is just a matter of what vehicle we drive. We're still getting to the destination. So don't invalidate each other on that. My advice out there, celebrate the self-production, because of the reasons we're talking about. It's so much more difficult at times to not have that backing and to kind of be flying on your own. So with just a passion underneath you.
I try to position myself to the theaters as a value add asset who happens to also be self-producing a show. And most of the time, especially for small theaters, that's enough. I went to one theater and I said, give me your Tuesdays and I will sell tickets for them. I will bring in content for your Tuesdays, which is, at least in our part of the country, the hardest. Most theaters are shut down on Tuesdays. Like completely. They don't even run rehearsals. And I took it as a challenge. I'm going to see what I can get in here. And I'm going to see what I can do to fill your dark night. And sometimes that's what it takes. It's hard work, and it's a lot of work. And like Dana alluded to earlier, it's it cuts into the time that you're going to write. It cuts into the time that you're going to be able to create. There's going to be a whole lot of bringing your kids with you so you can see them. But at the end of the day, it helps inform your writing because now you know what goes into it.
Right.
You've looked at your work through the eyes of the performer, not just the playwright. You've looked at it as the producer, as the director. The whole thing about me adding taglines and two-sentence synopses came from self-production because they're the marketing tools that I found that use to sell my work when I'm producing. That's going to help inform your work. Self-producing your own shows, even better, self-producing your friends' shows gives you an insight to the industry that you're never going to get sitting at your computer writing a show. And
Yeah,
it will make you a better writer.
Yeah, a playwright who operates only on the basis that they are a playwright is only going to go so far.
Yeah.
You have to learn the business because this is a business. Yes, it's wonderful to put art on the paper and see all the glitter come off the stage and all that sort of happy nonsense, but unless you learn how to do lights, unless you learn how to sell tickets, unless you learn how to clean the theater, unless you learn how to talk to a director, how to talk to backers, how to talk to people who are doing the work to get all this show going. Make a list of everybody who's involved with this show. I mean, just beyond the actors and the director and the playwright, and you're going to be surprised.
Yeah.
And all this goes into putting somebody's words on stage. And it is a business, and you have to get over that. You have to come to that, and you have to become good at it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to take any of the magic away. It's going to make the magic better. And it's going to make your playwriting better because once you know what the business is, you'll know how to write for it.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, as a playwright, sometimes I write plays with the wonderful knowledge that I know these are never going to see a stage because of how they've been written. So there's one that I wrote as part of the most recent 29 Plays Later, which was called Do Not Let Me Fall. And it was inspired by a circus, well, meant to be inspired by a circus. And part of it includes the use of a trapeze that is lowered and raised from the ceiling. And I know that that play is never going to see the light of day because of how it was written. But then
You don't know.
But then you're allowed to, then you just drift into that wonderful space in your mind where this is being performed in a big top in front of thousands of people.
Right. You never
You
know what
don't-
door is going to open.
Yeah. You don't. Tom Stoppard has a play called Jumpers, which opens up with a woman going back and forth on a trapeze, doing a striptease while she's at it, above 9 middle-aged guys doing a human pyramid. All right. And he was on Charlie Rose, and Charlie asked him, do you find that some of the things you do in your plays are just too much? They're unproducible? And Stoppard looks at him and he goes, you'd have to be mad to do something like that. So you never know. I mean, you can put the most bizarre thing out there. Somebody's going to want to produce this.
Yeah, I just thought like 6 or 7 different solutions that I could rig to get that functional.
Bob's ready.
Yeah.
The play's yours, Bob.
I mean, what it comes down to, though, is the brilliance of theater is collaborative translation. I mean, that's why I write. And I discovered that, by the way, from self-producing, that's the reason why I do what I do, is to see my work through other people's eyes, find the meaning of my own words through others. But what I discovered was if a show is good enough, it can be translated. If there are some massive technical limitations that is preventing me from doing certain special effects in a show, I can find a workaround if I want to get it on stage. I can find a way to get it done. Don't limit yourself in your writing, because it's the same thing as don't prevent yourself from submitting to a festival because you don't think the show is good enough to produce. That's not your call. You're the playwright. Leave that up to the person actually producing it. That's a producer's decision.
Completely different thing. Your job is to put your vision on the page.
Yeah.
That's
Peter
your job.
Pan. Okay, so this time this character flies across the stage. What? Spider-Man, Wait for Dark or whatever that one, right? Or even we had in Grease, one scene in a production of Grease, we had the angels float across the background of the stage. It's doable. It's always doable. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in a show that needed a biplane to go across the hall. We got it.
Yeah.
We did it. Yeah.
Look at Little Shop of Horrors and tell me that it's not producible.
Oh,
True. Yeah.
Imagine initially pitching that one. So we're
oh, I
gonna
love
have
it.
this plant.
Man eating.
I mean,
Oh, wait for it.
to Bob's point, it's more about understanding the industry from that inside. It's almost like when you learn to paint, you have to learn color theory and all of this, and you don't ever
Yeah.
have to use it if you choose not to, but you know it. So you know what you're going against in a way, and you know what you're not. So it just gives us that background knowledge that that may be a consideration that you have to prepare for in the pitch or something, or
Yeah.
if you're going to be a part of that
hmm
production team. But don't let it limit you, but the knowledge of it is important. And especially in an industry where funding is so unfortunately scarce, you
Yeah.
have to be an expert on the industry in general.
I think all in all, self-production is something that every playwright should try and do if it is financially viable for them. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I at the same time don't walk away at the first hurdle. Just because you can't, get into a full-blown theatre doesn't mean there are no options. Black box theatres, village halls, pubs, for God's sake. There are so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
pub theatres in
hmm
London now. It's ridiculous. And there will be somewhere that you can rent for not very much money, and you don't need all the bells and whistles. You need a story that you want to tell and an audience that want to hear it. That's
You
it.
need the courage to try.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've produced shows that literally cost me nothing. Because I asked a theater, could I do this? Not assuming they'd say no, assuming I didn't know what they'd say. But what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They do say no, and then you're exactly where you started. You didn't
Right.
lose anything.
You're never gonna know unless you take the shot.
Yeah.
Or failing that, you find a script that suits theatrical shenanigans, you send it to me.
That's true.
Okay, we now move on to our final question, which diverts back to you all. What do you think to be the most important thing you've learned about yourself as a playwright through your career? And because she asked, we'll start with Deb.
That I have a voice that is worthy of putting down and is worthy of being heard. And that's huge, right? Because so many of us think, no one wants to hear what we write. I don't have anything interesting to say. And I acknowledge that I have something to say and it has value. So for me, that's huge. It's pure and simple, just like that. It doesn't even need more explanation.
Absolutely. Bob?
That I can do it and that I'm worth the money to do it. I've taken jobs. So the professional writing job that I had 2 years ago, I actually brought Dana in to help consult for it. We had 28 days to write a 300 plus page series. And we did it. That it's okay to say yes and to figure out how after. Trust in yourself to know that you are capable of doing it, and then just do it. I mean, that's it. And I am convinced everybody can. That's not just to me. That is to our community. If you want it and you have the faith that you can do it, and if you've written a show, you've already done it. So it's okay to believe that you can. It's not arrogance, it's self-confidence and understanding your capabilities. Really giving yourself permission to have those capabilities. And sometimes it's also giving yourself permission to fail and learning from why it didn't work. And then knowing that now that you have that knowledge, you can do it again next time. That's it.
Definitely. Dana?
So I've learned creativity takes courage, and raising others up and taking them with you is a part of this process. I've been fortunate to be able to do that, and I've been fortunate to be on the receiving end of that. And a big piece I've learned is that my creativity isn't separate from my personhood, it is a part of me. So I can be a
Yeah.
therapist and a mom and a friend, and I can also be a creative. It's part of who I am. And it's okay, and it's amazing to embrace that when you're writing and away from writing as well. You don't stop being a playwright because you're not writing a play right now. And I would encourage everyone to be open to collaboration. We can build a structure, but everyone that comes into our world adds layers on top of it. So be open to that and get out of your own ego for that. Lay down the ego. Ego is the death of your creativity.
Absolutely. And finally, George.
I have learned, I was going to call it superpowers, but piggybacking off of what Bob said earlier about having the confidence in yourself to say, hey, I'm good at this. Playwriting is one of the things I do, which brings me the most joy in life. I could do this forever. I want to do this forever. I want to tell stories. Every story I tell is different. Therefore, I create new worlds. And everyone is twice as good as the last one. The other thing is put me on a stage and let me direct. Um, no greater joy than those two, because in most of my life where I bumble about banging into the things, knocking things over, creating havoc wherever I go, because my mind is usually on what it is that I'm writing. You put me in those two situations and it's almost perfect. I love what I do. I love being in front of a computer. I love looking at the words. I love changing syllables. I love fixing problems. I love creating people that have never existed before. This might sound a little egotistical, but hey, that's the way it is. This is what I do. And like I said, I want to do this forever. So, yeah.
Okay, we have reached the end. Guys, thank you so much for being back here with me a year after we started this.
Same time next
Congratulations.
year.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I'll put it in the diary.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of this amazing special episode of The Panel Presents. I hope you've enjoyed the repeat appearance of Bob, Dana, George and Deb, because it was an absolute thrill for me. We'll be back at the start of July with another set of panellists and more discussions, so I hope you can join us then. But coming up on Theatrical Shenanigans, we continue our third season with the emotional comedy play Tins by Pauline Watts and my chat with Ashley Lauren Rogers, so here's hoping you can join us then. As always, if you would like to show your support with a like, follow, share or comment on our Facebook or Instagram pages, you are more than welcome. Or if you'd like to buy us a pre-show cocktail on our Buy Me a Coffee page, it's always appreciated. I look forward to bringing you more shenanigans in the coming weeks, but in the meantime though, I've been Rachel Feeney-Williams, this is Theatrical Shenanigans, bringing down the curtain and saying, I hope you can join us next time. Theatrical Shenanigans is part of an RFW Scripts production, found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts and Podbean. Theme music is written and produced by Chris Cody.